I think for no other reason, that would be something different in the state party, to have a chairman born on the 4th of July. But our guys, perhaps they don't think that far. Listen, my name is Chuck Smith, and I'm running for state chair. Now, I ran for Attorney General, and I'm running for state chair because I think we need change. I believe you think we need change. Things need to happen differently. We can't continue doing the same thing, expecting that something different is going to happen. And we do it year after year after year. May I tell you a story? First and foremost, let me say, because I think there were some people confused. I am a diehard, #1, first time, ever, all the time, Trump supporter. I'm always. And listen, I support Trump for the reason that we've tried everything else. We've tried everybody else. We've tried the tall people, the short people. We've tried the people with a lot of money, people with no money. We've gone through every possible person, male, female. Trump deserves the chance. He is our president. He's elected our president, and I think we should give him the respect, which we're not doing, incidentally. I also support Corey Stewart. I support Corey Stewart for this reason: that we can't change history by tearing down statutes. Right. We don't like something in history. We should have been better actors. If we want to have a better history, we should have better behavior. That is the one thing that Corey has promoted. That's the very thing that I believe. I do want to tell you a story. Back in 2009, the year's 2009, we've just come off of a slew of annual elections that we've won. This is before Donald Trump. Americans, and this is Barack Obama in office, Americans were suffering. Americans were suffering socially, morally, spiritually, financially. You've seen people with droopy pants, with droopy values. You've seen people who just believe that the thing that's wrong with this country are the conservatives. The thing that's wrong with this country are the people who've lost their values. That's my opinion. But Americans were suffering. American soldiers were dying. The deficit was increasing. The economy was tanking. And there was no end in sight. And our Republicans were not acting the way they should have been acting. We warned them. They were warned that we could not sit back and lay back, rest on our laurels, and pretend that change was going to happen. While people were mocking us on our values of limited government and lower taxes. Doing what? Doing what types of things? Giving us the largest tax increase in the history of Virginia. Yes. Our guys. Yes. Giving us a $20 trillion deficit, growing at a rate of more than $2 million a minute. $3.8 billion a day. Democrats and Republicans, but our guys. We couldn't sit back. They were warned that we couldn't sit back, lay back, and rest on our laurels while people were mocking us on our values of fiscal and social responsibility. For nearly 200+ years, doing the same thing, voting for the same type people, listening to people tell us who to vote for, supporting them, going to their fundraisers, doing all these things. We were still a nation at war with our neighbor. And many of our citizens were still indifferent to principles of freedom and faith. What? We were still aborting Americans. Illegal immigrants were still killing Americans. Muslims, Islamic terrorists were killing Americans. Americans were killing Americans. And Americans were targeting law enforcement. How crazy was that? It was Donald Trump who said that after all we've done, we still could not hide behind the borders of national security. If we are going to stand up for this country, then we need to do something for this country. If we're going to be better citizens, then we have to have better values. So we look to our elected officials, and we said we need elected officials who are groomed by the Republican Party, of Virginia. We need elected officials to stand up for our children, for their safety, their schools, their programs, their values. Where are our elected officials in working to put God back in the classroom, God back in the courtroom, God back in the halls of justice, and the Constitution back on the mountain? Where were they? Where are our elected officials in standing up for law enforcement, standing down bad actors? Where are our elected officials in working to protect our privacy rights, our property rights? Where were our elected officials when they were saying anyone who crosses our northern and southern border and violates our laws, it better belong in a courtroom rather than a classroom running up and down our streets or hanging out in sanctuary cities? Where were our elected officials when it came time to say if you came across the Atlantic or the Pacific Ocean, that was a right, but that right was secondary to the right of Americans to be safe in their homes, in their property, in their schools? We've come to the point where our elected officials are some of the main people letting us down. Not all elected officials, but we've come to the